Hello, welcome to Loving Your Garden, the YouTube channel created by gardeners for gardeners. Today we're answering the question, is bamboo really the plant from hell? Does it deserve the bashing it's been getting in the mainstream media lately? To answer that question, we've tracked down a chap called Tony Churly, who's been working with bamboo, well, for the best part of 40 years. He's going to answer that question. He's also going to talk about the good and the bad bamboos, essentially clumpers and runners. He's got some great tips on spotting the difference between the two in the garden centre when you're buying. Also on a simple method of controlling even aggressive versions of the plant, a cheap and effective way to stop neighbours' bamboo encroaching on your property, and probably most importantly, how to get rid of bamboo if it's become a menace. But let's start with Tony's take on why the plant is currently getting such bad press.
Uh, it is classic moral panic based on worst possible case scenario. I mean, you've got things like willow trees growing next to your house, which quietly destroy most of the foundations. It doesn't stop you growing a flowering cherry in the front garden. Bamboo is a hugely wide genus. If you choose the wrong one, you can have a horror story. If you choose the right one, you can have a very pleasant experience.
So some bamboo good, some bamboo bad. Why are we selling the bad stuff to the general public?
That's an easy answer to come up with. The more rampant the bamboo is, the more easy it is to propagate. Therefore, you can fill your garden centres with it at minimal cost, and you can produce them by the millions. Whereas if it's one that doesn't run around very much, it takes forever to produce one new plant. Guess what happens?
I'm shocked that you would come up with a cynical explanation like that. So shocked. Profit then. It's all about profit.
It's that and lack of plant knowledge, to be perfectly honest. If you go back to the early 50s, there was a very good book produced by a gentleman by the name of Lawson, um, which was basically on the subject of cultivating garden bamboos, and he described a fair number of them as best contained on a small island. So the problem was known then. And you still find stuff like Sasapalmata nebulosa and some of these odd ones, which you plant them in your garden, and it won't just be in the next garden; it'll be in the next county within a couple of years. You've just got to be very, very serious about what you do, and if you do plant those sort of things, then use a rhizome barrier. It's not a difficult thing to install, and it will stop it going anywhere.
Okay, well, we'll come back to the precautions that we can take later. I just wanted to deal with the general issue first of all. Given the potential problems with bamboo, and given most people aren't experts, is it worth bothering with the plant given the many other options that we have?
Well, I'd say yes because I love the stuff. I think the short answer is that there are plenty of good bamboos, but uh, if you go and have a wander around your local garden centre, you will find the ones which are not going to run around very much and are reasonably well house trained are mostly quite expensive. Guess the reason why? It's because they take a fair amount of energy to propagate. If you buy some of the more specialist bamboos at a higher price, you will have something which is very unlikely to give you any problems. If you buy something which is dirt cheap, there's a good reason why it's dirt cheap. It's because it runs around like a rat. I've got two basic approaches to controlling bamboo if you don't want it to come into your garden. One is fairly hard work, but an absolute permanent solution, and that is you dig yourself a trench. It doesn't need to be very wide, but it needs to be pretty deep, about 2 foot 6, and you put a rhizome barrier in there. Rhizome barrier is a bit like a piece of conveyor belt to the average layman. You stick it in on edge vertically, and the bamboo comes up against it. It will never push its way through it. If you want to go for something which is a little bit more labour intensive but nowhere near as expensive, just dig yourself about 1 foot, 1 foot 6 deep trench and leave it open. bamboo flies fairly close to the surface in most cases. So if you dig yourself a trench and you leave that open, you pull up everything your side, and then whenever it sticks its nose through the side of the trench, you take your secateurs and go snip, and that's it. It will not burrow lower. They fly at a set height. That's the way they operate. There are some that fly very deep and are huge and horrible to deal with, but they're South American, and I'd love to be able to buy one myself, let alone recommend it to anybody else to find it. So each bamboo has got a slightly different habit, but you'll soon work out how deep it flies. And when you know how deep it flies, dig a trench a little bit deeper and snip it off whenever it sticks its nose through. There's two types of bamboos. They are leptomorphs, which basically run around like the grass on your lawn, i.e., long rhizomes and something that comes up every now and again, and pachyderm, elephant, and they come up like elephant's tusks, one next to the other, next to the other. Most of the Phylostachys, which are sold in garden centres, are a pachyderm. They are a non-runner. But having said that, if you give them the right conditions, eventually they will start to nose around for new territory.
Is there an easy way to make that distinction between good bamboo, bad bamboo?
One good way of checking, whenever I buy a bamboo, the first thing I do is I knock the pot off it before I buy it, and I look at what's going on inside the pot. If you've got something wrapping round and round and round and round and round inside it, like literally a coil of wire, that's going to be a runner. If there's a load of little bits trying to go upwards at the side, that's a clumper.
And would you recommend having a rhizome barrier for all bamboos, regardless of whether it's a clumper or a runner?
I've got away without it for many years in my old garden in Norfolk. Having said that, I think if people are at all nervous, a rhizome barrier is a relatively simple thing to put in. When you're digging the hole, dig it a bit bigger, pop a rhizome barrier around the outside. It's like keeping it in a pot, but it's in the ground and it looks natural. I've just had a friend who's planting some as a border to his garden and to blot out a particularly unpleasant building that he doesn't want to see. And I've said to him, it's not a runner, but for the price that you're paying for the bamboo, spend the same amount of money on a rhizome barrier and be certain that it will stay reasonably contained.
That's a good point. They do make great screens, don't they? If you have if you are overlooked by neighbours or there's an unsightly building, some bamboo plants can be very, very attractive screens.
Couldn't agree more. That's where people tend to get into trouble, because what do? You want to screen off your next door neighbour's shed, John, or or something else that you don't want to look at. So what do? You plant it right up against the boundary, and you are immediately into potential problems. So if you're planting it close to the boundary, stick a rhizome barrier between it and your next door neighbour.
What's the best way to get rid of a bamboo that is running rampant?
The bottom line is, wherever it's coming from, you stop it coming from there. So that comes down to my barrier or trench approach, and after that, you have got to dig it up. The one thing I will say about bamboos is that you only need to pull out the rhizome. It's not like ground elder, where every tiny little bit of anything that's left in the ground will reshoot again. I have literally got hold of a piece of rhizome and started pulling it out, and suddenly seen about 60 yards away a plant suddenly going boop into the ground. And there was nothing between me and it. I didn't even realize it was the same plant that was sticking its nose up. So you can pull it out like a reluctant piece of electric cable. Get hold of it, tow it out, and just find any bits of it that are in the ground. If you find something that's coming up, you know it's attached to the rhizome, dig down to the rhizome, tear it out of the ground. In terms of maintenance, probably the most useful thing to know is that bamboos, the canes have got a lifespan of 4 to 5 years. Once it gets to the point when all of a sudden you lose the leaves and the cane starts to lose colour, cut it out. Keep some air in it, a bit like you would with any other plant. The more air that moves around in it and the less dead material that's hanging about in the middle. Otherwise, eventually it will look like a bit of Malayan jungle rather than something decorative and pleasant to deal with. I've found a normal tree pot is way tough enough. It's probably tougher than a rhizome barrier.
So there you have it. Thanks to Tony Churly. Details of his YouTube site here if you want to know more about bamboo. Just to recap the main points, don't believe everything you read in the media. Just know what you're dealing with. Do some research before buying. Check the roots of the plant at the garden centre. Are they coming straight up or are they winding around the pot, indicating that it's a runner? Are you paying enough for the plant? If it's cheap, there's probably a very good reason. Do get yourself a rhizome barrier if you're worried, or plant it in a pot. A good tree pot will withstand most of the bamboos that you'll be coming across. If you have a neighbour's bamboo coming through to your side, dig a trench and lop off the runners as they come through, pulling the runners out on your side, of course. And if you have to remove bamboo, digging it out is really the only option. You can try poisons, but they're not great for the garden or you without proper safeguards. So either a strong spade or a mechanical digger, as I had to do when moving into my property. I hope you found this video useful. If so, please like and subscribe, and do check out our Loving Your Garden Facebook group. Up to 407,000 members last time I looked. Lots of inspiring gardeners, some fabulous photographs and good advice too. Thanks for watching.